The government has dropped the ball too many times for me to just think that trusting them blindly is the best policy. We're not being anti-anything in this video. What we're doing is putting on our critical thinking hats, and we're going to ask a few critical questions. Peace. What is up, everybody? I am OnenO. Welcome back to the blog. Today, I want to talk about the subject of critical thinking. It seems like in our society, with everything that's going on in 2020, the conversation around certain subjects has become extremely polarizing to the point where if you don't say the exact right things or if you don't agree with the mainstream narrative, then you're labeled anti. And if these are two ends of a very extreme spectrum, on one side you have people that are just buying the narrative hook, line, and sinker, and on the other side you have people that are anti. I want to talk about that middle zone, which I call critical thinking. It seems like to me the more that this narrative is progressing, that the mainstream conversation is not allowing people to sit in the middle. If you're sitting in this middle zone of having critical questions, they are just pushing you over into the extreme anti side. So to really dive into this subject, I found a post on Instagram earlier this week by someone named Dr. Tori. And the way that Dr. Tori lays out this argument, I think is brilliant. So let me just read this to you. Not being in favor of lockdowns, masks, and vaccines does not make me a conspiracy theorist or a far-right extremist. I am a person that believes in exploring for yourself, not blindly following politicians, doctors, and scientists. A person that believes in asking questions and having dialogue. I am a person that understands disease comes from our disconnection from our true self, spirit, creator, from a toxic, dead, nutrientless food and poisons in the food, air, water, and soil, not a germ. If that makes me a conspiracy theorist or radical of any type, God help us. I fully agree with how she's laying everything out here, and I want to dive into a few key things that she mentions in this post. The first thing I want to dive into is what she says right here at the end, that disease comes from our disconnection from our true self, from spirit or creator, and that it also comes from the toxins, the dead, nutrientless food and poisons that we experience in the food, air, water, and soil. I think that this is the main part of the subject that has really honestly bothered me from the very beginning of all of this conversation about health. You see, starting back in March of 2020, when everything exploded into the narrative, immediately the conversation became that we're not going to go back to normal until there's some sort of vaccine on the horizon. And then I've posted on my Instagram that he says we will not go back to normal until the world at large has been vaccinated.
But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice. For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.
So now we're going to put on our critical thinking hats. We're not being anti-anything in this video. What we're doing is putting on our critical thinking hats, and we're going to ask a few critical questions. The first question I have is there any way to boost the health of our body besides getting a vaccine? It's funny that this critical question is even considered radical because the answer to it is so blatantly obvious. What we put into our bodies is what our bodies can use to manifest the health of our bodies. So the type of food, the water, even the air that we breathe, but also a very important topic that very few people are talking about is the thoughts that we allow to possess our minds. When we sit behind a television screen and we just watch countless hours of fear-based programming and fear-based propaganda, that actually has a real measurable effect in our body where we release cortisone, we release all of these stress chemicals that actually start manipulating the genes and the molecules inside of our bodies to take on that stress. The main thing I want you to take away from what I've just said is that thoughts actually manifest in your body just as much as the food and the water that you put into it manifests in your body. So the critical question I'm asking here of is there any other way besides vaccines to boost the health of our body can obviously be answered by getting a proper night's sleep, by exercising, by sustaining a healthy diet, and also by limiting the amount of fear-based mind programming, aka news and media, that we let into our mind space. If we really boost our awareness around these subjects, we start to see that yes, there is actually a way that the body is naturally designed to fight off these diseases by doing naturally based things, by having proper night's sleep and drinking appropriate water and eating appropriate food, and also keeping guard over our mental temple and our inner temple. All of those things are actually proven to combat disease and illness in the body. So when the conversation immediately switches in the mainstream to a vaccine is the only way we're going to get back to normal, in my view, from asking this critical question, it completely negates everything that I've just said. It doesn't take into account that the body is designed to actually be able to take on these viruses. And yeah, it is also scientific fact that not every body is exactly the same. So what works for my body might not work for your body. But with a disease that has a 99.96 recovery rate, if you've even caught it, I just think it's absolutely hilarious that the only answer to that is a vaccine, when in fact the easier answers to that is to boost the natural immunity and the natural health of the body itself. So now let's break down the first part of what Dr. Tori had to say when she says, not being in favor of lockdowns, masks, and vaccines does not make me a conspiracy theorist or a far-right extremist. You see, all of these words that we just keep throwing around every 2 seconds in the mainstream world of far-right extremist or conspiracy theorist, all of these terms are designed to do one thing, and that is to discredit the person that is speaking and then to throw out their entire argument as if there's nothing of substance that they are saying. Did you know that when JFK was shot in the head back in the 1960s, there are actual governmental documents that you can go online and research for yourself from the CIA saying that they created the term conspiracy theorist specifically to discredit any narratives that went against their main narrative. So the CIA actually created the term conspiracy theorist to just simply discredit these people that were questioning this mainstream narrative. And it's exactly what's happening today, except now we have terms like anti-vaxxer, anti-mask. What I am proposing here in this video is that it is 100% possible to ask critical questions of things like vaccines and not be anti-vax. I've been watching this happen on Twitter and on Reddit. Celebrities and other people of prominent, roles in our society will come out and they'll just ask simple questions about these things, about the efficacy of masks or about vaccines. And just by asking critical questions, they're immediately labeled anti-vax. And what I'm telling you is the reason why they're labeled anti-vax is because it's the same thing as using the term conspiracy theorist or far-right extremist. It's just to simply discredit that question, discredit that person as if they're bogus, and then to dismiss them as so that you just don't pay attention to them. I think if we are approaching a time in the very near future where vaccines are going to attempt at least to become mandated, I think critical questions is one of the most important tools that we have in our tool bag to actually question the narrative, question what's in the vaccine, question the health of it for our bodies. And if we don't do those things, then I just believe that we're blindly going into a situation where we have to end up taking full responsibility at that point. If you don't ask any questions about what is in the vaccine and what is it going to do to your body, and you also know that it is in the government's law book that you cannot sue these vaccine companies if you have any adverse effects, well then you have to be fully willing to take on any side effect that comes from that vaccine. So the way I see it is you have two options. Either A, you just trust every single thing that the government is telling you, which if you look at history, I think you're going to find a lot of examples where just blind trust in any governmental body doesn't usually end very well. Or on the other side of that, you have to be fully aware that anything that happens to you because you take this vaccine is entirely on your shoulders. Any adverse health side effects that you experience from this vaccine, whether they're documented or not, if they show up in your body, it's on you. It's on your shoulders to deal with that for the rest of your life. So it seems obvious to me that a few critical questions before getting a vaccine put into my body, it seems obvious that that's the natural flow of any rational thinking person that would want to know, what am I about to put in my body? The government has dropped the ball too many times for me to just think that trusting them blindly is the best policy. So I think this is where I'm going to wrap up this subject, and I'm going to pass you a question. In your opinion, should a person who is asking critical questions of this mainstream narrative, should that person be immediately labeled anti-vax or anti-mask or anti-whatever or far-right extreme conspiracy theorist? Or should we allow the space for dialogue? My opinion is that the more dialogue on these subjects, the safer we all are. So why is it then that the mainstream is trying to cut out the people that are asking the questions and just call them crazy? Again, if you ask me, that doesn't seem to be the most transparent and honest way to handle this narrative. So put a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this subject. Thanks again for tuning into the video. And until I see you again along the journey, oneness in sound, I am OnenO. Peace.